Obviously, things have changed, right? I think one of the things we learned is, in this case, the world isn't static, right? Gas prices might be the classic example. But solar's become cheaper, so a lot of things have changed. So over time, your tariffs, feed-in tariffs, if you go back to years when we introduced them, they're more lavish right now, just because everything's changed. Then if you look at net metering piece of it, also probably very lavish, and perhaps should be based on some kind of a market index and then refreshed every year, as opposed to sort of basing it on the future price of the next fuel on a margin. There's something lost there. So those are probably things we learned. So we are still talking to our solar stakeholders right now to figure out what's a good happy medium, and we think we'll get there. But we also, we're interested in continuing to have them adopt it too. But we just can't do it in a way that allows you to buy power back, as an example, at a much more expensive price than you can produce it for. That intuitively, that just doesn't, you can't do that consistently over the long term. So those are probably some of the things we learned, but I think we'll get that right too.
I'm right here. Could I ask you a question? I mean, it's really refreshing and kind of exciting to hear your perspective about a lot of these technologies and sort of your approach to creating value for your customers. And I'm curious if you would be willing to reflect on how the fact that you report to a board of trustees as opposed to a board of directors, the MOU versus IOU perspective influences your ability to take this approach.
Yeah, that's a very, very insightful question. So there are three different. Let's say there are three different flavors, right? One flavor is investor-owned, where you report to a board of directors. Another flavor is the other end of the spectrum of immunity, where you report to either a city manager or a mayor or something. So we are probably somewhat of a hybrid. So if you say that an investor-owned is 10 and reporting to an elected official is a 1, we're probably 4.5, 4. We're not halfway there, definitely not on the side of being closer towards investor-owned. So that's kind of where I sort of view it schematically. Practically what it means is we probably have a lot more latitude to make decisions. But the good part of being on the opposite side of an investor-owned is because we're not for profit, we have a longer runway to realize value. In the investor-owned world, I mean, you think about next quarter's earnings call. It's a much shorter time frame. So you get a longer runway to extract value. So it doesn't have to be accretive to earnings the first year, as an example, as you would have in the investor-owned world. So you get a little bit more latitude. Now, as it relates to the specific board of trustees, and I'm going to hedge my comments a little bit here because I'm certainly aware of some of the debates going on here. But I think that we have a pretty good model. We have an ex officio mayor who's a part of the board, but to his credit, he doesn't wade in a way that's at all restricting or at all fraught with political implications. So we have a pretty good swath of what we're doing. Now, I would say, though, that it's incumbent upon us to talk to our stakeholders. I mean, we talk to our environmental stakeholders. We talk to the business community. I mean, everybody at a minimum quarterly. So you got to pulse them to know that you got to be with sort of the public or sort of with the zeitgeist of the community. If you're not there, you're going to give the politicians a chance to wade in if they start getting phone calls. That's just the way it works. So we've managed to stay ahead of that. I think we also managed to get some points on the board, and so the community has confidence in us. But I don't know that that would have been, we would have had the latitude had we been on a spectrum. So I think we have a lay board generally, along with the ex officio mayor, that I think has been very, very supportive, and we delivered. And as soon as we don't, everything changes. That's just the way it works, but we accept that. So that's kind of sort of my quick and dirty view of it. But excellent question, because coming from the investor-owned world, I had to figure that out very quickly.
Question. So I was just realizing it was just about a year ago when I was sitting in this room at this conference that the news had just broken about the reduction in the compensation that you were providing to your solar customers. And this is kind of a hybrid of those two questions, both in terms of community engagement and David's question about what you've learned in the interim. How, if you can, share some success stories, some best practices of how you have developed a better partnership with maybe some of the installers or solar customers in your service territory.
So before that, let me add another dimension to that question, and or to the dynamic, not necessarily the question. One of the other things we were concerned about was fairness. We plot a scatter diagram where these solar installations are, and they're in the high-income zip codes in San Antonio, and everybody pays for that. So you really have kind of a barbell in San Antonio. You probably could argue that compared to most cities that are major, we have a very, very, very small middle class, maybe almost non-existent. So you have a lot of lower-income customers paying for the subsidies for the wealthier customers. There's no way getting around that. So part of our motivation in addressing the issue was to address that. Before someone pointed it out for us. So that was a big part of it. So I think, having said all that, though, having frank, sometimes I would say even animated discussion with the installers helps us, makes us better. I mean, they're part of our stakeholders. But on the other hand, we have a lot of people that are low income saying, gee, if your rates go up one more penny, I can't afford it. I got to make some tough choices in my life. So, you got to balance all that. We've not yet sort of finalized where we'll end up, but I think we have a very, very good option on the table, and it really, just to not divulge too much of it, but it really shifts some of the subsidies and makes them more fixed, with maybe stop points where you stop and check to see what the market's saying, what solar prices are, what gas prices are, and then adjust accordingly. So that's kind of the model we want. To my disappointment, it was, the word on the street made it sound very binary, like we're just closing up shop and rolling the sidewalks up. And nothing could have been further from the truth. We just wanted something that, that could be viewed as fair across the board, but yet I guess I wouldn't say lavish, but yet a price point or a subsidy point that still allowed our solar installers to have an industry, and allowed our solar adopters to be motivated to install rooftop solar. Very complex. We were one of the first ones kind of talk about it. I mean, you saw what happened in Arizona. It got very ugly and contentious. We never got to that point, and I don't think we will. But we've chosen to take a longer time and not be sort of top down about it. And I think we're very close to getting there.
Doyle, you have been very generous with your time. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.